Elvis Presley and Colonel Tom Parker were out in Vegas looking for a place for his comeback. He and his wife talked me into doing Harper Valley PTA.
You didn't care for it at first?
I hated it. I said, Shelby, why did you call Elsie and tell her to cut my dress off like that? I said, you know I'm not going to be comfortable in that. I want to be like the others in long dresses. And he told me, you got to accept the fact that you're a mini-skirted commodity. You get you a pair of silver boots and get out there and sing.
A commodity?
That's what he said.
We're in here in Brenham, Texas for a very special episode of Drifting Cowboy with my sweet dear friend, Miss Jeannie C. Riley. Miss Jeannie, thank you for letting us come in your home and do this.
Oh, it's an honor. I was so excited I sat up all night. I think I got about 3 hours sleep this morning when I transferred to the bed from my recliner. You know, I'm excited. I have loved your podcast since the first one I saw. There was just something about you that was so real, and it's obvious that you care for the people, and you make everybody look good, even if the story's a little tainted. You have a way of telling it that it's just all right.
Well, I appreciate that, and you've been very kind to me. And so I have been looking really forward to coming down here and doing this as well, and seeing your home. And we went upstairs and saw your trophy room. That's just the walls. I don't think you could fit another trophy on that wall.
Well, you know, a bunch of stuff left there and went to Carthage, Texas, where the Texas Country Music Hall of Fame is. They've got enough stuff they could change out my display several times. You know, when you first walk in that building, my display is the first one on the right. And I wonder, how did I manage that?
Well, I think you deserve it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it was incredible to see all those pictures and memories of yours. There was a concert poster up there, Tom T. Hall, you and Bobby Bear.
I did a lot of shows with them because Tom T. Hall and Bobby Bear and Jimmy C. Newman were all booked through Key Talent. Jimmy Key, who was a co-publisher of Harper Valley PTA, New Keys Music, Jimmy C. Newman and Jimmy Key. Thank you, Lord. Jimmy Key. Yeah, they published Harper Valley PTA, so I did shows with Jimmy C., Bobby Bear, and Tom T. Hall, a lot of places. And that was before I had the chance or the money to buy my first bus. When I did buy my first bus, it had been Kitty Wells. That was an honor. But we were traveling in Cadillacs, riding in style, but, you know, it was nothing for me to be sitting in the back between Tom T. Hall and Bobby Bear. But, you know, back then, I hadn't gained the ability to express myself. If I have a compliment to give somebody, I do it. I don't say anything I don't really think. But if I think it, if I pass a little girl, a little boy in Walmart, and they look like they might be having a bad day, and I see something like, "You've got the prettiest eyes," they walk off smiling, you know. Well, I wish I had had the ability to express myself back then, because I would have told Bobby Bear that he was one of the finest people I ever met. Never heard an unkind or negative word spoken about him. And just love him. Well, and Tom T. You know, if it hadn't been for him, where would I be?
Right.
He didn't write that for me, but I ended up with it. He was sitting in Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, just Tom Hall, before he added the T, after I added my C to Jeannie C. Didn't have a car, I'm told. Just a starving rider trying to get going. He got a call from somebody in the session, one of the musicians who knew him and knew where he would be. Told him, if you want to see one of your songs making history, you get down to Columbia's main studio, Studio A. And I'm told that he literally ran down there. I would say it's probably 3/4 of a mile maybe from Tussie's. No further than that. But that's the night I met Tom T. Hall. But it was really nice getting to hang out with the writer and with Jeannie C, one of the finest men, and his wife May. I dearly loved them, and they were members of the Opry, and that had been the Grand Ole Opry. We got a Bluebonnet Opry here in Brenham, Texas. There's Opries everywhere, but the real Opry, Grand Ole Opry, was my purpose in moving to Nashville. I longed to be a member of the Grand Ole Opry because I listened to it religiously. And Harper Valley went over so big there because of the mega hit it was. Flash cubes blinded you. I believe half the audience was down front taking pictures, and it was a big hoopla each time I would come to the Opry. Well, Bud Wendell was the general manager at that time. Unknown to me. Took me a year to hear about this. He called together my management team, which included my producer, my booking agent, and the manager I had at that time, to discuss membership for me, offering me membership to the institution I had grown up longing to be on. They not only turned it down, but they did it in a very haughty manner. This was the attitude. When I was told about it, like I say, a year later, I was told, she doesn't need the Opry. In fact, that would hurt her. She's bigger than the Opry, you know. She's on all the major network shows, you know. It went pop. It even went soul. Oh my goodness, I had the awful deed of having to follow James Brown and Wilson Pickett because Harper Valley was also a soul hit. And what do you do after James Brown does everything but commit suicide for the audience? What do you do? I would beg, please don't make me go on last. And I'd be told by the buyer, well, your song sold the tickets. You have to. And the same thing happened in country music. I was having to close out, just learning the business, just trying to get repertoire together. And I was having to close over people like Conway Twitty, Farron Young, Charlie Pride, Merle Haggard, Waylon Jennings. Oh, and the most difficult one of all was Ferlin Husky. If you went on after him, you followed two people because he would bring his alter ego with him.
Yep.
I forgot his name. What was his name?
Yep,
Simon Crumb.
Yep.
How could I forget? But you had to follow two people, and it was believable. Jan Howard told the story that they traveled by car, like I did with the people from New Keys Music. He would be in the car, and he would get to arguing with Simon Crumb. One day, they're on the way to a show, and he got mad at Simon and threw him out of the car. They get 50 miles down the road, and he gets to missing Simon. And he wouldn't have it any other way. They had to go back and pick him up. So there's 100 miles that cost them on their trip to the next show. And he would buy an extra ticket on an airplane for Simon to sit in. So I don't know if he really believed Simon was real. You know, if it was just, I don't know. It could have been something that he thought would further his career if there was more than one of him, whatever. But he had that down to where I do think he got to believing that Simon Crumb was real. And that guy could put on a show. He was hard to follow. But I was happy to go on after all those people. You know, that brings me to a thing that I appreciated in Farron Young. I was told about this. I wasn't in the room. There were several acts on the show. These were package shows that there used to be a lot of. There was usually a token girl singer with a lineup of a bunch of men. That's changed. Women are starting to take over.
It seems like it, yeah.
Lainey Wilson's proof of that. Boy, she did good the other night. But anyway, I'm talking about the awards.
Yes, ma'am.
They were sitting around the room, and one guy was saying, little kid from West Texas, never done anything in the music business, gets a hit. I've had 30 number ones, each one quoting what they'd done. Why would I be going on after them? And I was told, Farron sat there for enough of that. Then he stood up in the middle of the room and he said, well, you better be glad that Jeannie C. Riley had a hit with Harper Valley PTA. Because of her, you're working tonight. Well, that endeared me to him.
Yeah.
Naturally it would. But I got some good Farron stories. He didn't want anybody to know what a good heart he had. I remember one time he was playing pool with my ex-husband, who had a service station at 21st and Grand, right down there close to Music Row, Exxon station. Anyway, he would go play pool at this place where Farron played. Well, he took a guy that worked for him who was in charge of the U-Haul business they had. And the guy was small, but he had this big hernia. And so they're playing pool. And Farron, just using his cue stick, touching that growth, that hernia, and he say, forgive my language, but this is Farron. What in the hell is that? And he would say, it's a hernia. Well, I don't like the looks of that. Why don't you do something about it? And the guy says, well, I can't afford it. He says, well, have you been to the doctor? And I think this guy's name was Wayne LeVague. He said, well, yeah, I've been, but I just can't afford the surgery. Farron said, and how much would it cost for you to get rid of that damn thing? His words again. And the guy told him how much he'd been told it would cost. Farron puts his cue stick down, gets out his wallet, peels off more than enough cash to have it done. And yet, he's gouging that hernia with his cue stick. You know, that's how people think. I mean, that's how they think about him. But he did so many things with the intent of helping people. You know, he turned down, I think it was Willie Nelson had written Hello Walls and offered to sell it to him, and he refused it. There were a lot of things about Farron that I really appreciated.
Yes, ma'am.
He was known to be rough and tumble, but there was a good side to him too.
Yes, ma'am. I want to talk about your younger days when you were a kid and how you got into music and all that, how you knew that you wanted to be a singer and got into it.
You know, you're right. This podcast is about me and not all those people I'm talking about. I told you yesterday on the phone that you'd probably have to remind me who I am.
Well, I tell you, we love remembering those folks too, though, and telling their stories too. So
I got a
great.
world of them, just a world of them. I need to write my autobiography.
Oh, you should.
It would be about that thick if I told it all. But anyway, well, listening to Lefty Frizzell, Hank Williams, and Patti Page, she was my original inspiration. I would hear a DJ say, and now here's the many voices of Patti Page. Well, what does a little kid of about 6 or 7 years old know about stacking tracks? I thought all those voices were coming out of Patti Page at once. So you can't imagine what I looked like trying to be her in my mirror and to my hairbrush. Or I'd take a tablespoon out of the kitchen. and I would gyrate trying to produce more than one voice. I imagine how silly I looked. I later wrote her a letter and told her about all this. But anyway, I was just amazed by her Tennessee Waltz and Mockingbird Hill, Cross Over the Bridge, a lot of stuff. I loved her voice, and she was my inspiration to want to be a singer. And my uncle, my mother's baby brother, 9 kids, Johnny Moore, had a monthly jamboree in our high school auditorium. Johnny Moore and the Jones County Playboys. Well, I had been secretly writing down songs, wanting to sing them. I even took shorthand in high school so I could take the words down off the radio and transfer them back into English. And that's why I took shorthand. But I had all these songs that I wanted to sing somewhere, and I had no place to sing them, and nobody knew I wanted to. My parents had no idea. My sister, my only sibling, she didn't know, because I'd wait till they were gone, and I'd get in front of my mirror and try to be a singer. I'd imagine that being a television going out for other people to see. So I decided one day, I actually got somewhere early. I got to the jamboree about an hour before it was to start, and I went up to my uncle, who had no idea that I wanted to be a singer, had never heard me. I said, "Uncle Johnny, could I sing on your show tonight?" Well, what's he going to say to his little niece? He always called me Tinker. In fact, my mother called me Tinker till the day she died at 95. That was my nickname. But anyway, he said, "Well, go back there and work up something with the band." So I went back there and I worked up My Shoes Keep Walking Back to You. And then I did Gene Shepard's If You Were Losing Him to Me, I Wonder What You'd Do. Those are the first songs I ever sang. I was really sorry about what I wore. I wore gold pants and a gold sweater. Can't remember what the pants were made out of. They were wool. It was wintertime. I got up there and I could literally feel my knees going in and out. My legs were going in and out. I was so nervous. And I thought, I wish I'd worn a dress so they couldn't see what my knees are doing. But I got through it without forgetting any words. I didn't know what pitch was, so I don't know how I did with that. But I felt like I'd done right with my phrasing and remembering all my words. And the home folk were accepting what I was doing. It was, wow, this is awesome. I'm scared to death, but this is awesome. So I remember sitting down in the front row after I got off stage, and I was thinking, that was so scary, but I wish they'd call me up there again. So that's how I got started. I would sing in a few little places that my uncle would go sing. I remember going to Crane, Texas to do a show, and I would play shows at Dice Air Force Base. They would bring in talent, some kind of officers club, but it had a name, but it was an officers club. Mm. And that was just about all the experience I had when I went to Nashville. But now, this is a part of my story too. Big part of my inspiration. I've done told you how much I love Lefty Frizzell. Mm. Well, I was newlywed, washing dishes, looking out the window. I had a window right above the sink, washing dishes, radio behind me. And I hear a DJ say, "Now here's a newcomer named Merle Haggard." I quickly thought, Haggard? Why would anybody have that for a stage name, Haggard? But I didn't hear his first release. The first thing I heard was, "From now on, all my friends are going to be strangers." Mm. The Liz Anderson song. Lynn Anderson's mother. She wrote The Fugitive, too.
Yes, ma'am.
But anyway, I didn't dry my hands or anything. I lifted my hands out of the water and dripping all the way to the radio behind me. And I pointed at that radio and I said, "Forever, you'll be my favorite singer." I determined that I'm going to say by the end of the first line, I knew that I had Lefty for Sale back in spades because that was Merle's favorite. And from that time on, I wanted to go where that music was coming from. And Buck Owens became a big favorite of mine. I had another uncle that I was very close to, lived in Amarillo, Texas. He turned me on to Buck Owens. And if it hadn't been for Buck Owens, Loretta Lynn, and Connie Smith, I wouldn't have had a repertoire. Once a Day, Connie Smith's song that Bill Anderson wrote for her, became my signature song in my little home area. It was known that she'll do that song and she'll close with it. So that's where I got my songs, you know. Incidentally, I would have others. Like the second time I appeared on my uncle's monthly show, I sang Buck Owens' Fooling Around and Jan Howard's If Your Conscience Can't Stop You, How Can I? So I had other sources of music, but mainly it was Buck Owens. I don't know why I didn't sing Merle stuff because I was so crazy about him. My ex-husband came in, and he came in from work, which was the Texas Highway Department, and I was crying, tears actually hitting the dishwater. And he said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "I just want to go where that music's coming from." Well, I didn't think he paid that much attention to it, but the next day he comes in from work. He says, "Start packing." He said, "I turned in my notice today. I don't want to see another teardrop hit the dishwater. I'm taking you to chase your dream."
Oh, wow.
2 weeks later, we're gone. We get to Nashville, I find out, oh my goodness, Buck Owens and Merle Haggard are not here. They're in Bakersfield. I should have gone west instead of east. To this day, I love the Bakersfield sound. And I have the high honor of getting to talk to Norm Hamlet, Merle's band leader. 2 or 3 times a year we'll talk. And we'll talk for an hour or two. Just love that man. You know, he never developed any bad habits, even in the midst of show business. But at one time, if I'd have thought I'd ever get to be close friends with Merle Haggard's steel guitar player and band leader, well, I think I would have fainted, maybe died. But anyway.
Well, you said that your husband had told you to pack up and y'all moved up to Nashville. What was it like when y'all got to Nashville?
Well, being just eat up with fandom for country music and its people. Before we could go to the first place we would stay, which is all we could afford, like the red light district of Dickerson Road, you could get a cheap hotel room for a couple of weeks while you looked for a house. That's what we did. But before we would go there, even though we're tired from the trip, it was the heat of August, 1966. No air conditioner in our 57 Chevy, one of those turquoise and white ones. You can picture it. We're tired, we're sweaty, but before we go to get a place to stay, we had to go down to Music Row. We had to go by the Ernest Tubb record shop and see Broadway and see the Grand Ole Opry. That was the main reason. Before we could even get out of the car and get rested up, you got to go see the Opry and everything around it. Well, it was discouraging to me because right out in front of the Ernest Tubb record shop, which is right there on Broadway. Oh, and I hear it's coming back.
Yeah, they just reopened it.
Well, yay. You learn these things before I do, but I got the drift. It's coming back, and that's wonderful. But anyway, right out in front at a parking meter, there was a guy hugging that parking meter and singing into it for all he's worth. Obviously drunk, but he's singing, he's performing, and I thought, I guess they don't all make it. You know, that was a discouraging sight. Guy singing into a parking meter. But we lived on Dickerson Road for about 2 weeks. Then we found a place in Madison, a dead-end street. We were at the very dead end of Cherry Street. We lived there for a year or two, and my husband ran. My Uncle Johnny Moore, whose show I sang on back in
Yes, ma'am.
Anson, Texas, he bought a service station, Bellshire, Texaco, on Dickerson Road. And my ex-husband ran that station. And anyway, we lived, I want to say, maybe a year. My daughter was 1 when we lived there. I think we moved when she was about 2. We moved to Westchester Drive, still in Madison, Tennessee, which is just a little ways from Nashville, you know.
Yes, ma'am.
Our address was actually Nashville. We got mail in Nashville, but we moved to Westchester Drive, which was our house, was a duplex, was directly across the street from Ira Louvin of the Louvin brothers. And that's where he lived when his wife shot him 7 times.
Oh, yeah.
He lived over that, died in a car wreck not long after that. But just to live across the street from Ira Louvin was a big deal to me.
Oh, yeah.
Kitty Wells, she lived just a few blocks away. That was awesome to me because I had loved her. And I loved Loretta Lynn because when she first came out, I thought she was Kitty Wells at first. I thought Kitty sounded a little different. Well, it wasn't her. But I loved them. And a guy that I'd like to mention, Weldon Myrick,
Oh, yeah.
staff band for the Grand Ole Opry for years and years. At our little once-a-month jamboree, Johnny Moore and the Jones County Playboys, Weldon Myrick was a cop in Big Spring, Texas. He would drive the 100 miles 2 ways to play with us in the band, and for $100. You know how tall I'm going to say he's probably 6'6", maybe, up there like Ray Benson. Charlie Daniels was pretty tall, but Ray was a little taller. I got something I'd like to say. I had the pleasure of getting to spend a whole afternoon out in Las Vegas at the Flamingo Hotel where I was playing in the showroom. Fats Domino, who had been a hero of mine. I loved the kind of music he did. He was playing in the lounge. Well, Elvis Presley and Colonel Tom Parker were out in Vegas at that time looking for a place for his comeback, as if he had ever gone anywhere. But, you know, it was a big deal when he landed that job at the International Hotel. But they were out looking for the place. And I guess while Colonel Tom was probably gambling somewhere in the building, because I understand he loved to do that, Elvis was sitting there with me and Fats Domino. We just got to chat for 2 or 3 hours. And then when Colonel Tom came back, Elvis said, "Would you mind if I came to your show tonight?" Well, the word duh hadn't come into vogue yet. But duh, yeah. I knew I'd be nervous, but by all means, come to my show. I never got to go to his. I only saw him on TV or in a movie. But he came to my show. And I remember we were peeping out of the curtain. I say we, me and the band, peeping out of the curtain to see if he indeed was coming in. They waited until all the lights were down. The showroom was inside the hotel, no access to outside, so there were no windows or anything. one little pinhole of light from the ceiling was there just for the purpose of the waiters and waitresses being able to bring drinks and things to the people after their meal. And I don't know who planned this. Maybe God. I don't think Elvis needed the exposure. I don't think Colonel Tom planned it. And I doubt that the house, the Flamingo Hotel, I doubt they planned it. But that ray of light came down and circled Elvis's face. And he was probably 40, 50 feet out in the audience, which I was blind to. I could only see the people that were sitting right stage front because the light blinded me to everything else. But so I wasn't nervous, wouldn't be nervous. There's that light. I played the Elvis Presley the whole show. I saw his face, the only one out there I could see. In my repertoire was a song he'd just had a hit on. And I hoped that he thought I did it just because of him. But it was one of my favorites of my old blues days, Jimmy Reed, Big Boss Man. That was in my repertoire. And it was amazing. After the show, then he comes up and says, would you mind if I came back to the dressing room and visited? Well, it was a green room. I mean, it wasn't where I changed my clothes, but it was a green room that led to my dressing room. And anyway, he said, I'll just stay a few minutes. Well, he got in there and got comfortable realizing we were common folk. We thought alike. We believed alike. I remember him getting comfortable enough. He's leaning back and crossing his leg over, and about to fall off the couch almost, just sitting there comfortable. There's pictures that have been circulated of me and him together. I'm playing with his tie in one picture, which I'd like to clarify. I would not assume to start playing with Elvis's tie. It wasn't a dress tie. It was one that you put a ring on it to hold it in place, and it's like a flowing tie. You've seen him wear those. Anyway, I was told by the photographer, well, do something personal. Play with this tie. I was told to do that. I'm sure a lot of people that saw that picture, and it's been widely circulated, would think, wonder what they had going. Well, I never spent a minute alone with Elvis Presley. But we loved his visit. I remember talking about what we like to eat on our cheeseburgers, just all sorts of things. Well, one or the other of the Memphis Mafia, his followers, would open the door and peep in. And I'm thinking, what did they think we're going to do with him in here? There's no door to get outside. You know, we're not going to take him anywhere. But he would just kind of shoo him off, you know, with his hand. They kept, for about an hour he was in there. I think he only intended to come in just to say hi and you know, just to be courteous after the show. But I had a great visit with him, and my crew that was with me loved him. The Chamber of Commerce president from my hometown, Anson, Texas, near Abilene, she was there. Several different people from businesses from my hometown. My mother, my sister had flown out from Tennessee. And, no, wait a minute. She'd flown out from Texas. She was still living in Texas at the time. But I am the one sitting right next to the door that leads into my dressing room when Elvis asked me this big question. Would it be okay if I use your restroom? Which removed my doubts as to whether or not he would ever need one. People like that. You have ideas that maybe they don't even have to. You know? But he goes to my restroom, and when he comes out, he just keeps standing. He's ready to leave. And as he walks out the door, my ex-husband, who never expressed thoughts about another man, too macho to compliment another man or anything. But this is how he did. He sat there just like this and said, "That's the prettiest man I ever laid my eyes on." The prettiest man I ever laid my eyes on. And he was prettier than any picture I'd ever seen. I've seen Hollywood mag covers that look like he might have a ruddy complexion. Let me tell you, his face was a tanned baby's butt. You couldn't see a pore in it anywhere. just beautiful. But anyway, when he left out, I could read my mother's mind and my sisters and the other ladies that had flown in from my hometown. They wanted to go to that bathroom after he was in it. But I'm the one sitting closest to the door. I hop up and I run in there and I get on that throne after the king had left the building. It was awesome meeting him. But the reason I brought him up is to say this. We were talking about tall people, and I mentioned Charlie Daniels. Well, he's special to me in a lot of ways. We had a prayer group on 16th Avenue South in Nashville, Music Row, every Tuesday, 10 o'clock in the morning, Koinonia bookstore. And it was like a who's who in country music. Everybody that loved the Lord and country music would come there at one time or another. This particular day, it was an overflow crowd, standing room only. And Charlie Daniels happens to be sitting next to me. Well, my daughter had previously had an amniocentesis, which proved that my grandson was a spina bifida baby. Her amniotic sac was full of spinal fluid. When he was born, there was a little gash in his back that was healing over where the fluid had leaked out. We have documented medical proof of all of that. But I asked her to come by the prayer group, which Barbara Fairchild was the leader. She was the prayer leader. I love that girl. She's awesome. But anyway, when my daughter Kim Franks is her name, back then she was Kim Coyle, when she comes walking in, well, most people didn't know who she was, but some of them did. Charlie did not know. Charlie Daniels didn't know that she was my daughter. But he just happened to be the one that stood up and patted the seat for the little pregnant lady to sit down, not realizing that he's giving me a chance to sit next to my own daughter. So she sits beside me, and Charlie gets down at our feet. And then I announced the purpose in Kim being there, prayer for the spina bifida child. When Barbara Fairchild began to lead about 50 people in this prayer, Charlie Daniels got up on his knees, laid one hand on my daughter's stomach, one hand on my knee, making us the threefold cord that's not quickly broken, spoken of in Ecclesiastes. And he's the one that got the word that the healing had indeed taken place. As Kim leaves, and she left immediately, she didn't stay for the rest of the group. She went to have a second test. He walked her to the door and looked her right in the eye and said, "Little lady, everything's going to be all right. You'll see." Well, it was about 2 weeks later. I don't know why it took that long to get a test back. We just happened to be in Bakersfield, California, when the time to call for the results, when we reached that time, we pull up next to a payphone up a little hill. We pull over in Bakersfield. She climbs that little hill. And she had not cried, but her attitude was this. She said, "I don't understand it. I know people, and I've even got friends who smoked, drank, did drugs or whatever, and they had healthy babies. My daughter had stopped nicotine. She had stopped caffeine, everything for the sake of her baby. But her attitude was, if God wants me to have a spina bifida child, I'll love it with all my heart. So she hadn't cried, and I hadn't either. Something didn't register with me, even though we had the proof of it. I just somehow didn't receive it. Not that I was too good to have a spina bifida grandson. It just didn't feel like I was going to. Faith in action. Anyway, I'm sitting in the bus as she climbs that hill to the payphone. And I had opened my Bible at random, just sitting there, hadn't decided where I was going to read. But as she leaves the bus, I said to the Lord, would you please prepare me for what she's going to tell me when she comes down that hill? If she's going to give me the news I don't want to burst out and tears and make it harder for her. Would you prepare me? So I look down at my Bible and I start to turn page like I'm going to look for something to read. I hear the Lord tell me, no, just look down. I had already inadvertently opened up to where he wanted me to read. I looked down, and of course, I didn't see a verse that said, your grandbaby does not have spina bifida. You're not going to find that in the Bible. But I have read the Bible, and in no other place could it have been clearer. I looked down, and I had opened up unknowingly to the blessings and the cursings of the children of Israel. And when I dropped my eyes, it landed on the verse. And the fruit of the womb will not be cast before the time. Full time. Full-term baby. Healthy baby. I knew that's what she was going to say. She comes down that hill and she steps up on the bus and burst out in tears the first time. She couldn't even say anything. And then said, they can't find one drop of spinal fluid in my amniotic sac. He's never been hospitalized for anything. He's brilliant. He can concentrate on a dozen things at once. And I was able to take pictures of him and my daughter, current ones, and my great-grandson, Jeremy's son, Dallas, named for the Cowboys. I was able to take those pictures and have a visit with Charlie Daniels in Grand Prairie, Texas. It was June the 6th of 2019, and it was wonderful catching up with him. It was a meet and greet. He gave me 30 minutes before his show. He was opening for Travis Tritt, who is another friend. I got Travis stories I love. Again, I'm talking about everybody but me. But I was able to show Charlie, this healthy boy, his healthy son, excels in all of his sports. And here's my daughter, still alive, looking good. And it was wonderful catching up. As we say our goodbyes after his show, right before Travis Tritt comes on, Charlie walks probably 60 feet from me, turns around and waves, and the last thing I heard him say was Psalm 91. His wife, Hazel, is a friend of mine, and she sends me pictures of every time she changes the flowers on Charlie's grave. But engraved on his grave is Psalm 91, the words to Psalm 91.
Oh, wow.
Which was the last thing I heard him say. So he was special to me, but I wanted to tell you the start of this whole conversation. When I met him the first time, he had just come off of South's Gonna Do It Again. And I had been booked on the Grand Ole Opry. Can you believe the Grand Ole Opry never stopped booking the girl whose management turned them down to make me a member? Somehow, the Opry folk and the general manager realized that my management team was talking from their pocketbooks and not my heart, because they told the Opry, she's too big for the Opry. The Opry will hurt her. And do you really think that we will commit her to 32 appearances for $300 and something scale when we're making thus and such on her out in the world?
Yeah.
But they never quit booking me. I worked the Grand Ole Opry with Ray Price 3 months before Billy Starnes and I married in 2012.
Oh, wow.
So I got to be on the Opry many, many times. I just never had the joy of being a member.
Yeah.
You know, even after I changed management, they don't put somebody on unless they have something new, something that warrants membership. I never had a hit so big or anything that would make them think, well, we're going to offer it to her again. That never happened. So that was an unfulfilled dream of mine. But thanks to the Opry, they never forgot me in spite of.
Yes, ma'am. Well, you said that y'all got up there in '66, right? It would be a couple years before you would record Harper Valley. What happened in between there? How'd you kind of make some connections and get to record that song?
I mentioned Weldon Mike a while ago. Weldon, after playing steel guitar with us country bumpkins in our hometown, he moved to Nashville. He went to work almost immediately with Bill Anderson,
Okay.
who discovered Connie Smith. And her first record, Once a Day, made history, made her a superstar practically overnight, almost on the order of a Harper Valley, I would say. But I got a letter from Weldon, which goaded me on to make the move. My ex-husband had said, I'm going to take you to chase your dreams. But a letter from Weldon sealed the deal. He wrote and he said, you know, I work for Bill Anderson. Well, he's discovered this Ohio housewife that for all the world reminds me of you. I'm not quite sure why, but she reminds me of you. And I think if you'd keep at it, keep working, I believe you could do as good someday. I think you ought to move to Nashville. So that was my encouragement to go. So I've got Weldon Mike to thank for that bit of encouragement. Anyway, after getting there, I told you my ex-husband ran the Bellshire Texaco station on Dickerson Road for my Uncle Johnny Moore. He would have my demos playing in the station. And I must back this up. When we first went to Nashville in earlier '66, my uncle had 2 Cadillacs. He loaded his wife and 4 kids up in one. Me, my baby, my first husband, and my mother and daddy were in the other car. I mean, you can't go to Nashville unless you're in a Cadillac, can you? And we also stayed at the Tennessee Motel on Dickerson Road at that trip. But we went to the Grand Ole Opry. I got to see Connie Smith for the first time. Loretta Lynn was there. She came in, hair all up in curlers and carrying 2 babies on her hips. That would be Patsy and Peggy. It was exciting. Well, my uncle stepped out as Doyle Wilburn of the Wilburn Brothers was passing by. And I just want to say, before I go on, that I think that it's insane and ridiculous that the Wilburn Brothers are not inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. They had their own TV show. They had a publishing company, a booking agency, long-time membership of the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah.
Why? Oh, and giving Loretta Lynn her chance to shine, giving her a chance to get her talent out before the public. But they're not members. That's a pet peeve of mine. But anyway, as Doyle's walking by, my uncle steps out and said, Doyle, I hate to bother you, don't mean to bug you, but this is my little niece, Jeannie Riley. And I believe if you'd give her a listen, you'd be interested. Well, something in the way my uncle put it, and Doyle looking at me, something jived like, maybe so. He said, well, we're leaving town in the morning, which would be on a Sunday. He said, we'll be back Wednesday morning. Well, we were going to leave on Sunday. We couldn't afford to stay, even at the Tennessee Motel on Dickerson Road for 3 more days. 4 more, yeah. But we did. My uncle helped that out because he had service stations on 3 corners at the crossroads in our hometown. And so he paid for the extra days. I went to the Wilhelm Agency, which was Wilburn Brothers' offices, and Surefire Music published my first song that ever got published, Lonely Just Walked In. Well, Johnny Russell, you remember?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody remembers Johnny. Catfish John. Oh, yeah. And my goodness, he wrote Act Naturally, which I got to do a duet with Loretta Lynn on the Wilburn Brothers show one time.
Oh, wow.
And I did Don't Come Home a-Drinking with her another time on that show. So the Wilburn Brothers, they gave me a lot of opportunities. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Johnny Russell was working with me before Doyle Wilburn came in on that Wednesday. And everything that I was singing was Connie Smith. And she sang at least a half a step higher than I did. Mm. Some songs, maybe a whole step. But I just had to sing them in her key. And so I was screeched to get up there. And on the end of every line, I was putting a Connie Smith signature pop on my voice. You know how she makes her voice pop and thrust it out there and stop it real quick and it pops. I was doing that on the end of every line. So when Doyle came in, he took Johnny Russell into his office, and they didn't know I could hear them. And Doyle said, "How's it going?" Johnny said, "Well, it's going good, but we've already got a Connie Smith." That was back when uniqueness mattered.
Oh, yeah.
Doyle Wilburn took me out to, by the way, they never made a dime off my career, and yet they promoted me. They paid for my demo session, expecting nothing in return. Love those guys, but especially Doyle. In fact, I was with Doyle Wilburn in the hospital the day he passed away. Mm. He was just became a personal friend of me and my whole family. But anyway, we recorded 4 songs that night. The countryest things I've ever done, which is exactly what I moved to Nashville to do. You can hear on one song the influence of Loretta Lynn. On one song you hear the influence of Connie Smith. But after I heard Johnny Russell tell Doyle Wilburn, "But we've already got a Connie Smith," I never sang another Connie Smith song. Mm. I realized I've got to find out who I am. I've got to be me. Yeah. I can't be Connie Smith. We already got her, and she does it just right. But that 4-song demo is what eventually landed on Shelby Singleton's desk. Mm. When he heard that, even though it was so country, he could still hear my voice on Harper Valley PTA. His ex-wife, Margie Singleton, had recorded it. In fact, she had commissioned Tom Hall, who became Tom T. Hall, to write her a song as a follow-up to her number 20 hit in country on Bobby Gentry's Ode to Billy Joe. Mm. Margie had the country version. Everybody loves Margie. But anyway, she had recorded Harper Valley PTA. And he had heard her and thought, and he told me, he told my friends who wrote for him, Royce Clark, who recorded under the name Clark Bentley. In the movie Coal Miner's Daughter, he was the DJ.
Oh.
Royce Clark was the DJ when Loretta was telling him. I hate to remind you what she said. It was something she was eating. And, well, I'm not going to tell you. how she said it made her feel. But if you saw Coal Miner's Daughter, I bet you can. I bet you know. Anyway, Royce Clark was the DJ that acted shocked when she said that, and she didn't even know what she was saying. You know, Loretta, who had to learn how to walk in a pair of high heels, she didn't know what she was saying to that DJ, but that was the guy who worked for Shelby Singleton as a songwriter and as a singer. And he and his wife talked me into doing Harper Valley PTA.
You didn't care for it at first?
I hated it. I never heard Margie Singleton's version until about 2 years ago.
Oh, really?
A fan friend of mine from Wausau, Wisconsin, sent me a CD of, I think it was 33 people who recorded it. Icons. Loretta recorded it. Dolly Parton, she had a cute version of it. Dottie West, Laurie Morgan, Martina McBride, Tanya Tucker, Nat Stuckey,
Yeah.
Dee Mullins, The Day After Harper Valley, Sheb Woolley, his version of it. But there was about 30-something of them. And that's the first time I ever heard Margie's. But there was a lawsuit. Margie was going to release Harper Valley as her follow-up to her version of Ode to Billy Joe. But she and her husband, Leon Ashley, were traveling in Europe. And this song was just sitting in the can. And Tom T wanted something to happen with it. So he was pitching it around, and this lady named Alice Joy. She was married to Neil Merritt, a DJ out at Weno, WENO radio in Madison. It was the biggest station at that time. I don't know what it is now, but they were the country station. Now WSM, that was a whole different thing, you know, with the Grand Ole Opry, and they had radio shows, Ralph Emery and all. But where your records are going to get played if you're a recording artist was We Know Radio. Well, this lady, Alice Joy, now she might have been a good singer, probably was, but I don't know if she was told to do this or it was her idea. But she was trying to copy the mood of Ode to Billy Joe. You know, they're both story songs and were different, and they were 1 year apart. Ode to Billy Joe was in August of 67. Harper Valley, August of 68. Anyway, Alice Joy was singing it like, and the music followed. I want to tell you all stories, whispering it, and I'm thinking, oh my word. I just didn't see the potential in the song, and there was a line, Mr. Harper couldn't be here because his wife's got him locked up in the den. And I thought, why? Why is he in the den? Is he drunk? Is he on drugs? Is he an epileptic and he's rolling around the floor? Or maybe he's having an affair and his wife's got him locked out so he can't go to be with the other woman. What is the deal? So I put him in Kelly's bar. Now we know what the problem was. But the last line was not there. The last line was the day my mama, no, not my mama. I put that the day that mama socked it to the Harper Valley PTA, which with that one word, any man could have sung the song. And that would be okay. He's telling a story. But when I changed it to the day my mama, I became the little girl who brought the note home to my mother. I should have been dressed in saddle Oxfords or tennis shoes, jeans or a little plaid skirt. I was the little girl. Why did I have to look like the mother? I was made to be the mother. I was told, if you're in an airplane, if you're in a supermarket, you be in that miniskirt. That's your image. I'm thinking, why do I have to be my mother? But I was too dumb to realize, hey, I'm making them some money. I can have an opinion too. I just did what I was told. And I hated the image because I was uncomfortable. I was more worried about what are my knees doing than what I'm singing. If I had dressed just like I felt, I would have been wearing gingham dresses like Kitty Wells, them long floor-length gowns like Loretta, and then she wore all different kinds of things. But I would have been dressed totally different. But my image became the sassy woman that told off the PTA. And by the way, Tom T. Hall wrote that song based on a personal experience. He knew this mother. I don't know if her husband died or if they were divorced, but she was raising a house full of kids by herself. I mean, they were poor, didn't have much, and the kids got blamed for everything that happened at school, whether they did it or not. Well, this one daughter was blamed for something that she said she didn't do. Tom T. Hall believed her. Her mother believed her and went down and told. She didn't tell off the school board. I know, it was the school board. She didn't tell it to the PTA. But you can't sing the day my mama socked it to the school board. That doesn't work. So he made it the PTA. But originally the line was not socked it to. It was the day my mama broke up the Harper Valley PTA. And Shelby Singleton, the producer, his wife at the time, she said, you know, that's an awfully big song to go nowhere at the end. Why don't you steal that line from Laugh In and say the day my mama socked it to the Harper Valley PTA? When she said that, you could hear it from the control room and out in the studio, musicians, everybody said, that's it. And I had never sung the song. I took it home with me the day before, having visited the office, told him when I signed a 3-year contract, you're going to have a number one pop hit. And I said, I don't want a pop hit, I want a country hit. He said, well, I'll give you both. And he did. But I didn't like the song because of the way it was presented. Believe me, I liked it when I heard the playback. We did it the first time with the original last line. Those guys, the musicians are such perfectionists. I couldn't hear any difference in the second take musically. But we did one more take with the day my mama socked it to line added. And the way the guys burst into applause and you could hear hollering, chaos, everybody was excited. That's when Tom T. Hall got the call. If you want to see one of your songs making history, get down to Columbia's A studio. And he ran down there. Well, I heard that playback and I knew I had something, and yet I had never sung it. I was angry because I was having to do it. My friends, the songwriters I told you about, Royce Clark, he and his wife were told, if you can get her to record this song, I'll let you have the B-side. And they told me, and she was my best friend. Loved that woman. They were age-wise about halfway between me and my parents. So they were kind of like parents to me. And they told me, if you don't do this for yourself, if you can't do this for you, please do this for us because we've been here trying for a long time. You're young. You know, if nothing happens with it, 3 years is not long. And I'm thinking it'll be like an eternity to me. But I did it for them. Mad at myself for saying yes when I wanted to say no. Upset at them for putting me on the spot. And yet I loved them so much I never harbored any bad thoughts to them. But there were other things going on in my life that weren't the best. I had been working as a secretary for Jerry Chestnut. This is another way you wanted to know what happened to get me going. That service station that my ex-husband ran on Dickerson Road, Jerry Chestnut would stop in there to fuel. He had an office down on Music Row, past Key Music. And he heard my demo that the Wilburn brothers had done on me. He took it out to Monument. That's when he got me a deal, contract with Monument. And that didn't work out, even though they had drawn up the contract. It just wasn't meant to be because Harper Valley was right around the corner. 1 year later,
Yeah.
I'd have been signed up for 3 years and I would have missed it if I'd stayed at Monument.
For those who don't know, Jerry Chestnut, legendary songwriter, Good Year for the Roses, Trouble, Oh Lord, 4 in the Morning.
He wrote those while I was working for him. My favorite was Another Place, Another Time for Jerry Lee Lewis. And he wrote The Wonders You Perform for Tammy Wynette. They Don't Make 'Em Like My Daddy Anymore for Loretta Lynn.
Yeah.
He was awesome. And he was like a combination of big brother and daddy figure to me. And he was trying to get me on United Artists where Del Reeves and Jerry Chestnut himself were recording. Del Reeves had recorded Jerry Chestnut songs too, like A Dime at a Time. $1 in the jukebox, a dime at a time, something like that. And Bob Montgomery at United Artists was considering putting me on that label. And so I hated to tell Jerry that I am going to go 2 doors down from Passkey Music because he hired me to be his secretary just so I could be on Music Row and have that joy. And I remember Jerry Chestnut left Passkey Music before I did. I closed about 5 till 6, walked 2 doors down to Columbia Studio to record Harper Valley.
You just recorded Harper Valley PTA, and then it skyrockets and becomes the mega hit that it was.
Let me tell you, you wouldn't believe how fast it became a hit. We left the studio that night. Shelby Singleton, the producer, my ex-husband, and me, we went out to WSM with an acetate. Had not been mastered, certainly not pressed. Just an acetate, if you know what one is.
Oh, yeah.
You would. Anyway, dry lips. We took it out to Ralph Emery, and I was a fan of his show, but I ran scared of him playing it because he was honest to a fault, but he never gave anybody false hopes, and you got to credit him for that. I have seen him play somebody's record, take the needle up early and say, "Don't quit your day job." So I didn't know what to expect. He puts Harper Valley on, and I mean, just a line or two, he lifts that needle, and I think, uh-oh. And then he re-cued it to the beginning and played the whole song. You would not believe how the board lit up. It was like Christmas. People called it, "Who is that? Never heard her before. What's that sound?" Well, that would be Jerry Kennedy on the resonator guitar. The signature licks for Harper Valley PTA that were copied over and over. Well, that Tom T. Hall made a career out of. Jerry Kennedy, the session leader, and Shelby Singleton were very close. In fact, he named one of his sons Shelby after Shelby. And Jerry and I are still in touch, but he told me, he said, "I would never have stolen that sound, but Shelby gave it away." The follow-up to Harper Valley PTA had none of that resonator guitar. That was a new sound introduced into country music. That particular sound, he pioneered it.
Yeah.
And Shelby Singleton came with the second record, the follow-up to Harper Valley, was The Girl Most Likely. A ton of rhythm guitar. no dobro, as people called it a dobro, but it was a resonator guitar, picked instead of slide. Anyway, when Shelby Singleton didn't go with that sound for my follow-up, Tom T. Hall began to be recorded by Jerry Kennedy. Jerry produced Tom T. Hall, and that became Tom T's signature sound, that resonator guitar. You think about it, that became his sound for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
And but anyway, people were calling in, wanting to know all about it. Just lit up like a Christmas tree. That song was a hit off of an acetate before I got home from the studio recording it that night.
Wow. That's incredible. What was that like for you to just go from there to superstardom almost overnight?
The night when I got home, I couldn't go to bed. We had a stereo. I just leaned up against the stereo and I played it repeatedly over and over and over. And you'd think that I would get tired of hearing it, but instead of getting tired, I got more excited, more and more excited listening. I woke my mother up while it was still night, called her. Somehow I had a feeling I could afford that long distance call by the time the bill came in. I just had a feeling, because we had to keep calls at a minimum. To let my parents know that I was okay prior to this, I had it made up with my mother that I would call and just ask for myself. Obviously, they would say, well, she's not here, but they would know they'd heard from me. When my daddy heard about that, he said, if you ever call here and ask for yourself, I'm going to say I'm you. You are not going to cheat the phone company like that. So he wouldn't have it that I would call and ask for myself. But this night I had the feeling that I'd be able to pay that phone bill. And I told my mother, I said, I have just recorded the next number one song in the nation. She said, oh, Jeannie, I've heard hopeful things out of you before. I said, no, you'll see. It's going to sell 1 million records. Well, I got more excited. Called her back the next morning after she got up. I said, Mama, forget that million. It's going to sell at least 3 million. Well, of course, it outdid that. I do have an RIAA certification framed that Harper Valley PTA, the single, was 1 million selling single. And so I had to get paid for that. Same thing with the album. And I got the first tape cartridge award. No, I got the second. Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass got the first. I got the second. I got the Jukebox Record of the Year from MOA, Music Operators of America. I mean, wow, all these things on my wall. It was amazing. But I was just mesmerized by what had happened and just living a dream. But I remember the night that I performed Harper Valley PTA live. It was the first televised CMA Awards. 68 was the first televised. They had the CMA Awards the year before, but not televised. But anyway.
That's the one that Roger Miller hosted, wasn't it?
Well, he's the one that presented me the record of the year.
Okay, yeah.
So he was definitely a big part of that night. I remember Roy Rogers and Del Evans were there. I presented Johnny Cash with the album of the year, Folsom Prison.
Wow.
Oh, and I got my picture made between him and Merle Haggard. When I got up, this was sponsored by the Kraft Music Hall. In respect to them and to the Country Music Association, I should have been dressed in a formal, like all the other women were. I had designed a beautiful, I have to describe it as a French Marie Antoinette dress. like a real beautiful powder blue velvet. The Empire waistline was in then. So from here up, and sleeves, blue velvet with the puff sleeves, and just a cutout, no cleavage. I'd have been covered, and it would have gotten attention, and I'd have been comfortable. Layer after layer of silk organza of the same color blue as the top. I go to pick up that dress 3 hours before we go live. And what do I find? A dress about this tall, about 3 feet tall, if that long. And I ask my dressmaker, Elsie of Nashville. Elsie of Nashville was married to Doug Kershaw.
Oh, okay.
But they had a colorful relationship. Oh, what an entertainer. But anyway, I said, Elsie, what have you done to my dress? She said, well, just listen and try to understand. She said, Shelby Singleton called me and told me that if you show up tonight in anything besides a mini skirt, he'll have my job. I said, I'm paying for this, Elsie. He's not. She said, but you know he's the boss. I called him, and back then I let everybody run over me. I wish I had the personality I got now. Back then, I'm nice to people, but I don't let them run over me.
Right.
Learn to say what I think, and it feels good. Well, I called him up in the best way I could rebuke him. I said, Shelby, why did you call Elsie and tell her to cut my dress off like that? I said, you know I'm not going to be comfortable in that. I want to be like the others in long dresses. And he told me, he said, you got to accept the fact that you're a mini-skirted commodity. You get you a pair of silver boots and get out there and sing.
A commodity?
That's what he said. Commodity. For all I say about him, I have to say, recording sessions were never so much fun as they were with Shelby. I mean, things like Pete Drake and his talking steel guitar. One of the character songs in that Harper Valley album, Tom T. Hall wrote sequels, Sippin' Shirley Thompson, Mr. Harper, and Widow Jones. They're characters from the song, but he wrote songs about each character. Well, on the song Mr. Harper, like if the question's asked in the song, Mr. Harper, where's your young bride tonight? And his guitar would say, I don't know. He would answer questions. And so at the end, the very end, if you listen closely on Mr. Harper, you will hear Pete Drake's guitar say, Shelby, bring me a beer. The guitar actually said that. I mean, unusual things would happen in his sessions, and the musicians loved the fact that he let them drink in the studio. That they could drink beer in the studio. I don't think every producer put up with that because you never know how they might be affected by it. But people just enjoyed gathering. That first album, Harper Valley PTA, was recorded, all of it, at Columbia's main studio, the same studio I did Harper Valley itself in.
Yeah.
But thereafter, he built the studio. Now, I don't know how many tracks they have today. They may have 1,000 tracks for all I know. But back then, 24 track was the going thing. And that's what Columbia Studio had. But Shelby builds this studio he called the Blue Funk. And it's only got 8 tracks. And so many things I did sounded like they were recorded in a well. But, music covered my voice. And I got to thinking things like, maybe he thinks I can't sing is why he covers my voice. And so many of my songs, I'm hitting bad notes on because I'm trying to learn the melody, the phrasing, the meaning of the song, and singing it for the first time into the studio as we're recording it. You know, my career was so bittersweet. I had the opportunity to do what I'd always wanted to do, but I didn't like the way I was having to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, there were some people in the industry after you did Harper Valley and it took off who weren't exactly kind.
Well, I can't name names. I won't name names, but I remember having dinner out at Billy and Betty Walker's home. They were really nice to me. Back when I was reputed for having depression. And my career took a downward spiral because I'd always made all my commitments. They could count on me being there. In fact, my daughter, who was my background singer, and front up, she did solos too. But she and the band would always tell me, I believe if you were dead and you're coughing and a buyer came and showed you an unfulfilled contract, waved it under your nose, you'd get up and sing. You know, I was responsible to my commitments. But when I got into severe depression, which I was in for probably 25 years, if you added it up all at once, it was spread out. But thank God I got healed and delivered from that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I shared with you earlier how that happened. One sentence from God, he just said, I'm not finished with you yet.
Yes,
I'd heard that from a lot of people, but I didn't receive it from them. When I heard it from him, I received it. It's been a good 8 years since I've had a lick of depression.
That's great.
In fact, that demon would try to use circumstances that were disappointing or, things like my grandson having to drive 700 miles away from his son to do air traffic control. Mm. When he didn't get to go to the first place he wanted to, he ended up where he wanted to be. But the day that he took off for Tulsa, Oklahoma, by himself, not knowing anybody where he was headed, and I literally screamed and hollered around here for one night. I got up the next morning and I was fine. At one time, it would have put me in bed for a month. Mm. But I was healed of all that depression. But a lot of people in the music industry gave up on the idea of me performing. Buyers were afraid to book me because will she be there? And Billy and Betty Walker were good to me. She booked me on a few shows, and they tried to keep me feeling welcome in the music business. Mm-hmm. Everybody and their dogs, everybody that were members of the Grand Ole Opry, I believe, were at their house for this particular occasion. People were eating in the dining room. That's where I was. They were eating in the den, out on the veranda, all over the house. Great, great meal. Well, in the dining room, Jerry Chestnut, my ex-boss, unknown to the lady sitting across from him, unknown that he was one of my biggest supporters, had helped my career, and he didn't appreciate it. But this lady singer, she didn't know our connection. I'm sitting at the head of the table. There was 2 seats on each side, and then somebody else at the other head of the table. This lady, all she would have had to done is just turn her head a little bit, and she'd be looking me straight in the eye. But with no acknowledgement to me whatsoever, and in the midst of no discussion whatsoever of music, nobody's talking music, recording, or anything, she loudly says to Jerry Chestnut sitting across from her, so that I could hear and everybody around could hear. You know, Harper Valley PTA was a self-contained hit. Anybody that got that would have had a hit. Heck, if I'd have had it, I'd have had a hit. stuff like that happened to me all the time. And I'm sitting there thinking, you know, why are you doing this to me? That particular lady had written a book, and did she ever do a great job? I think the best bio that Nashville has had, at least at that time when I read it, it was awesome. But I drove all the way from south of Franklin to Green Hills in Nashville just to be there for a book signing she had, to buy her book to support her. And she wrote something nice in my book, but thereafter was never nice to me again. What was it? Was it jealousy? I don't know. I got to Nashville, and 2 years later, I have Harper Valley PTA. There are people that had been there 20 years still trying, not getting far, or maybe getting a little ways. I come in and I'm a parvenu of some sort of upstart that, well, she just got here and look what she's already got going.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one that was even worse than that. Well, first I want to tell you this about the Grand Ole Opry building, the CMA Awards of 68. When I was performing Harper Valley PTA, and that sliced off, that dress was supposed to have layer after layer till it hit the floor. It probably would have required a hoop petticoat. But here I am, little legs sticking out with all these layers. I look like a stork or something. Fat little layers down to about the panty line, and then boots. I'm up there singing, and I look out at the crowd. Some people are jeering, some are even pointing and laughing, and my feelings are getting hurt. And then I think, well, why should they like it? I don't. I'd make fun of this dress too if I wasn't having to wear it.
Yeah.
How could I hold a grudge? Because I thought the same thing they did. And I remember sitting back down in the audience after my performance, and I hadn't yet received an award. And I remember sitting down knowing that the votes have already been cast. It's sealed in stone. But I sat down and I prayed, Lord, don't let me win anything. I don't want to go back up there again. But they called me up for the record of the year, and Roger Miller presented it to me. But anyway, I always wanted to clear the slate and let people know that I'm not the one that said, I got an image and I'm going to live up to it. I don't care how you're dressed. CMA doesn't matter. The Craft Music Hall doesn't matter. I'm just going to be me up here. Well, if I was going to be me, I'd have looked like Loretta Lynn or Connie Smith or Kitty Wells or somebody. But anyway, after that, I got rejected by so many people. One lady, when I first was depressed and laying around, and I was given medicine, I was put on lithium, which encouraged weight gain. I'd probably gained, I'm going to say I probably weighed 155, 160. Don't ask me how much more I've got on me now. I mean, I was 100 pounds the day I recorded Harper Valley PTA. 100 pounds on the nose. Well, I doubled that, so now I can sing my own duets, and I actually think I'm working on a trio. But back then, I had gained a few pounds, enough that it looked like I needed to lose some. And I had been invited to go to the awards, not the awards, to go to the Grand Ole Opry by Billy Ray Cyrus. He reached out to me when I was in my depression, called me one day and said, this is Billy Ray Cyrus. Is this Jeannie C. Riley? I said, oh, Billy Ray. I said, you have Elvis Presley with you too? I didn't believe it was him because his speaking voice doesn't sound like his singing voice. And he said, no, this is really Billy Ray Cyrus. I said, well, sing a little bit of Achy Breaky Heart and prove it. He did. I said, well, you're him, all right. So, anyway, he said, well, I've heard that you've been depressed, and my heart goes out to you. And he said, I love Harper Valley PTA, and I'm recording that. And I'm going to be talking about it on Nashville Now. At that time, let's see, John Schneider was Bo or Luke. Which one was he?
Bo.
Bo. Okay. Luke Duke. He was hosting Nashville Now. And Billy Ray Cyrus was going to be talking about his recording of Harper Valley. And it was strange that I even answered the phone when he called because I didn't know who it was. And I was too depressed to talk to people at that time. But I know it was a God thing that I answered the phone. He said, I want you to be my guest. I'll send a chauffeured limousine out to pick you up, bring you to the Opry. That's where he was performing. And he said, I'm going to be doing Harper Valley PTA, and I'd like for you to be there. And I said, oh, I thank you so much for calling. But I said, I've been depressed. And wait a minute, it wasn't the Grand Ole Opry that night. That was another night. He was going just to do Nashville Now. Anyway, he said, you've got people that would love to know that you're doing all right. You know, people don't know what's going on with you, and I think you'd make a lot of people happy to see that you're able to get up now. He said, I think you can make it. I said, I really don't feel like it. I've laid around. My face is bloated from laying in bed, too much sleep, taking lithium, and I don't look right. My face is swollen. He said, I think that they'd be glad to see you. And he said, I believe you'll come. He said, I tell you what, I'm going to pray about it overnight, and you do the same thing. And I have a feeling that you'll call me in the morning and say you're ready to come. I woke up the next morning, unbelievably ready to go. I mean, I felt able to do it. I got up and I went, and it was a blessing. I didn't like the way I looked, but it was a blessing. Well, the next time he calls, he's going to be performing it on the Grand Ole Opry. And that dress that I hated so bad that was cut off, he planned for me to come out in the middle of his song. And he said, I've got a dressmaker I'm hiring to make that dress just like you designed it. And you come walking out, and people will see you in the dress you dreamed of to start with.
Wow.
All you got to do is just put it on and come out there. Well, the Opry found out about it and didn't think it was a good idea. And most likely, maybe at that time, they were afraid, will she be able to make it? Because it was rumored that I was depressed, to the point that I think it was also rumored that I'd lost my mind. And if you knew the things that I thought, how disillusioned I was about reality, the lies I believed from Satan, you'd think I was crazy. I saw things and heard things that are so abnormal and bizarre that I can say people need to be aware that Satan has a counterfeit for everything that the Lord does. The devil has power, but God's power overcomes it. And that's what happened in my life. I believe that I went through a Job trial publicly in which I looked crazy. The things I thought, you wouldn't believe things I thought. I believed the lie at one time that people thought that I was responsible for all the evil in the world. I thought that people thought I told Susan Smith somewhere on the East Coast to drown her 2 little boys, and that people thought I told Tim McVeigh up in Michigan, go down to Oklahoma City and bomb the federal building. Or if a guy out in Idaho shot his family and then himself, that I was sending the evil that was causing them to do it. Well, I knew better than that. I knew I didn't, but I thought people thought I did. I think that came from a lot of rejection. If I told you all the things that people did, mostly women, I didn't have much of that kind of response from men. They accepted me better than the women did. But I was healed from all that. I guess it was schizophrenia. Must have been. When you believe the devil's lies, he can do all kinds of things with your mind. But the Bible says, have the sound mind of Christ. Would he tell us to have something that he wouldn't enable us to have? So I learned where those voices were coming from, and they ceased. But I know there were a lot of people that thought that I'd gone crazy. Billy Ray Cyrus stuck his neck out and took me places. One time he was being given a humanitarian award, presented to him out at Opryland, big room out there. Wanted me to be on hand, wanted me to be the presenter. That guy, he was so good to me. He would invite me to come out to his house, and after I got better, he'd call me and he'd say, get that big old Bible of yours and get out here. He had found a church in Brentwood, close to where he lived. And he would attend with his family. And in the middle of the service, while the preacher's still preaching, people being afraid that maybe in the closing prayer, he'll get out of here before we can get an autograph. They were coming down into his aisle, bringing Bibles for him to sign or other things to sign while the preacher's preaching. So he said, I just can't go to church anymore, so get that big old Bible and get out here. Well, the first time he said that, when I got out there, we sat down at his kitchen table. I said, well, you have a particular place you want to read? He said, well, no, maybe we ought to pray about it. I said, well, that's just what we'll do. And we prayed. I opened my eyes, and my Bible was already open at random. I looked down, and no, that was not what we were going to read from. But it was coincidental, a God wink, so as to say, I'm here, I'm with you. I looked down, and here's what I read. The House of Cyrus. C-Y-R-U-S. That's what I looked down. There it is, opened. I said, well, that ain't where we're going to read. But I believe that's God winking and saying, I'm here with you for whatever you do read. But I couldn't go out there without him giving me something. One time I was about to leave, and he went and got black gloves for me to have. And he had a staff he had made, kind of like the old biblical staffs, well, like Moses' staff. He gave me a staff one night. But one time I was out there, I can't say I ever paid much attention to plants. They can make a room, but I don't think about them. But as I was leaving, this was new in his foyer. The prettiest plant I ever seen. It was like nearly all the way to the ceiling. It had personality. It was just beautiful. So that I said something to him about it. I never said to anybody, oh, where'd you get that plant? Never in my life. But I looked at that, I said, Billy Ray, where in the world did you get that plant? He grinned and winked, and he said, Travis Tritt. Was I ever happy to hear that? Because I am maybe Travis Tritt's biggest fan. I buy everything he does. If I don't, he'll send it to me. He sent me his gospel album last year. I cried all the way through. It was beautiful. It's my husband's favorite thing he ever did. But I don't have to fast forward through anything he does.
Yeah.
I like everything he does. And he can do it all. I mean, he does the Stevie Ray Vaughan song, and it's great. Trouble. I believe I like it better than Elvis's. But yeah, I was thrilled to see that plant. And I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "It was an apology plant." You know that song, Old Outlaws Like Us, has a line about he'd vote for Hag, something about, well, all the dancers, the Billy Rays or whatever, I would choose Hag. Travis doesn't have that kind of heart. So he wasn't thinking when he wrote that. And he had help, I guess. It was him and Waylon and Hank Jr. I love the Outlaws. I love their music. I love honky-tonk music, outlaw music, traditional country, but I don't like pop country. That's my pet peeve. But calling no names, but you know when you listen. But anyway, I love everything he does. And when I heard about the rift between him and Billy Ray Cyrus, it bothered me because I loved them both. And I wanted to think the best of both of them. Well, Billy Ray told me a story. He said, I was hurt by that song, and I think justifiably so. He was at the Academy of Country Music Awards out in L.A., and he was getting an award for Achy Breaky Heart. His dad was out there with him. His dad's a Pentecostal preacher. I relate to him. I'm the only Pentecostal in my family. And they've locked me up for that. Literally. But I always got back out. And anyway, Billy Ray was toying around with the idea of what he was going to do. But he wasn't sure if he would or not. And his dad kept telling him, son, don't do this. You'll be sorry. You're going to bring yourself down to their level. If they've hurt your feelings, you're going to hurt theirs. You're going to put yourself right on their level. You'll be sorry. And Billy Ray told me, he said, I didn't know whether I would or not. He said, but when the moment came, I reached into that pocket and I pulled out that quarter. And I said, here's a quarter. Call someone who cares. And he said, I was sick the minute it rolled out of my mouth. I knew my dad was right. But a lot of people think that riff continued on. But Billy Ray told me that he and Travis had worked together several times after that, that they had made amends. But there ain't no telling what Travis must have paid for that plant. It was the most awesome thing I'd ever seen as far as plants go.
Yeah.
So, for some people who think that riff is still going on, it ain't.
Well, before we get out of here, I think we got to talk a little bit about Tom T. Hall and how he was. I know you obviously were around him a lot. How was he?
Tom T. Hall, it was an enigma. You never knew what you were going to get out of him. And I've heard other people say that he was withdrawn or whatever. I don't believe he enjoyed entertaining. He loved creativity. He loved the writing the songs, and his wife was an inspiration to him. When she died, he began to lose the creative juices in his songwriting. But he would develop something else he had to create. He began to write, to do paintings. Last Christmas card I got from him, he's standing in front of an easel, and the painting is beautiful. He's got his dog. That dog's all scrubbed up and looking beautiful, standing next to him. Very stately, and Tom T's there was nearly white hair, silver hair, looking his best. But when his creativity started to go, it was very discouraging to him. And without Dixie, his wife was Dixie. Without her input, he lost a lot of his inspiration. Now it sounds like I'm talking about his death. And I do have my thoughts. I think a lot of people would argue my thoughts about it. I have felt closer to him since he's been gone from this earth than I did when he was in it. And I have my reasons for thinking that. Maybe I'll tell after I tell you something else first. I think that he was always in the mind of creativity. I remember standing at this place, this eatery in Franklin, Tennessee, where I lived, Dotson's. All the stars went there. If you ever went into Dotson's, 8 by 10 pictures all over the room. Home cooking, simple place. I was checking out, standing right next to him. I should have broken into his thoughts and said hello, but I kind of waited for him to. He didn't say a word. I don't know if he knew I was even standing there. May have, may not. I don't know. But on the other hand, when people would come to town to visit us, they'd always want to see stars' homes. Well, I lived in Franklin at that time, and if I was out of town, my mother would take them around. Well, Tom T. Hall lived in Franklin, so his Fox Hollow was always one of the places that we'd go for them to see. We'd always go to Dolly Parton's. It wasn't that far off. And different ones. Betty Jean Robinson, whom you may not know, but one of my all-time favorite gospel singers. She started out in country music, writing country songs, like big hit for Hank Snow, Hello, Love. She wrote a lot of good songs. But anyway, she lived just practically across the road from Tom T. Well, one day we had a visitor or two in town, and I'm taking them to see Fox Hollow. Well, to see the house good, you can't just see it from the road. You have to pull in there a ways to get the full view of the house. Well, down closer to the road is where his studio is, and I think where he spent time writing and stuff. Later on, he was living. But this day when I'm taking the visitors up to see Fox Hollow, I see him coming out of the office studio area, and I'm thinking, oh no, I'm trespassing, and he's going to come up to the car and recognize me. Well, I rolled down my window as he approached, and I said, I'm sorry to be trespassing on your home here. I said, but we got friends in town wanting to see some of the stars' homes, and your Fox Hollow is one of the prettiest. I said, I'm sorry. He said, don't be sorry. He said, you just go right up there to the house. If Dixie's out working around in shrubs, you tell her that y'all are going in. He said, you just take them in, go all through the house. He said, if it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't even have this place. So I see that side of him, but I would see him in another place, and he would seem to be in Wonderland. I'm thinking he was creative, even then. I think he was always thinking. He probably got thinking headaches, but he came up with so many masterpieces.
Oh, yeah. What a songwriter.
Oh, Homecoming, Old Dog's Children, Watermelon Wine. I love Ravishing Ruby. Ballad of $40.
Yeah.
So many things that I just loved of him. But I can't say that I spent a lot of personal time with him. I was at his house at Fox Hollow for a party one time, but he was known to disappear. He would decide he's going to go up to bed 10 o'clock. His guests could stay till midnight if they wanted to, but he'd gone up to bed. Dixie would entertain him. He just was not that much of a people person, but he could be so nice, when you could catch his mind not occupied with so much that he had going on.
Right.
I think he was a genius. We probably would have had a difficult time talking to Einstein.
Yeah.
But anyway, I love Tom T. And I must have told him thousands of stages how I appreciated his song, Harper Valley PTA, and what it had done for me. But it dawned on me a few years back that I don't know if I ever told him. I told the world, but did I ever tell him? Out of the clear blue, his birthday's May the 25th, one day before Hank Jr.'s and my little great-grandson Dallas's. I decided I was going to send him a birthday card and just tell him some things. And I told him, I said, I must have told millions of people how grateful I am that you wrote Harper Valley PTA, what it's meant to my life. But I don't know that I've ever told you, and I want to thank you for that. I said, I know you didn't write it for me, but I ended up with it, and what a difference it's made in my life. And I told him, I said, in fact, I think God let me get your song as the catalyst decades down the road to become who I am today. I said, my role, I'm an intercessory prayer warrior, and especially for people in the music business. The reason I'm able to give them encouragement, I told him, I said, on Facebook, I read prayer requests. Somebody's having an operation. Somebody just lost a child. Somebody's worried about this or that. It touches my heart. So I'll go to the privacy, a messenger, and I will tell them, I read your prayer request, and I'm keeping you in prayer. But we know there's strength in numbers, so if you would like for me to pray with you, here's my number. They see Jeannie C. Riley, and they think, oh, wait a minute, that's that Harper Valley woman. Yeah, I know her. She's a viable person. I'll let her pray for me. Whereas if I put my sister's name, Helen Scott, they might think, what's she up to? Is she going to pray a blessing on me or a curse? You know, they don't know. That his song gave me the opportunity to have the platform I was meant to have. It just took a couple of 3 generations and several decades to get me to where I'm living the life God planned. And I think that's why I know more people and have more friends now. It is not about me anymore. Looking back, I don't think it ever was. I didn't have confidence as long as I tried to put me on everybody else's plane. I was in competition, and in my mind's eye, I didn't measure up. It don't matter. I'm not trying to measure up to anybody. I'm trying to minister to people. You wouldn't believe the people in the industry that call me for prayer on a regular basis. Leroy Parnell, especially. He's a good friend. Do you know him?
I don't know him personally, but I would
Super guy.
hope to have him on one day.
That would be great. Oh, what a wonderful dad he is. He's got this little son, Jack, who's playing guitar really good. But now he's gotten into sports and different things, and Leroy's just having to watch him grow up. But they have as sweet a parent and child relationship as I've ever seen. He puts that boy first. But Leroy's in a real happy place right now. But he's called me with heartbreak. He's called me because a hand was having to have an operation, and heaven knows, I think he's the best slide player I've ever heard. At least up there with the very best. We've prayed, and God's always miraculously answered. One time, his sister had come up from Texas to be with him in Tennessee at a surgical procedure he was having. And the next morning after we'd prayed, she said, we can't keep him still. He's just up rejoicing, and the doctor's amazed, just great reports. It's such an honor to be able to be a part of such an uplifting, life-changing thing as people being healed. All I do is ask. I have asked the Lord before, why me? Kind of like the Chris Christopherson song, Why Me, Lord? I loved that song then. I love the message. But I've come to realize now, more than I did when I was plastered everywhere and being lauded as the Harper Valley lady, I did not have the blessing in my spirit to know that I had succeeded as much as I've got now. Old, retired, fat. But I like myself because I am blessed to contain the treasure of the Lord in this earthen vessel. I've asked him before, why do you do these things through me? Because I can't do anything without you. And he'll say, that's why. That's why I can, because you know you can't. My strength is made perfect in your weakness. That's why I choose you for such. You don't try to steal any of my glory because you know you ain't got it. and so I feel like I have finally reached the pinnacle of my success. And the only thing it has to do with me is that it has to do with everybody else.
Yeah. Well, I want to tell you, you're not only a legend and an icon of country music, but through the stories that you've shared, you're an inspiration to a lot of people. And once again, I want to thank you for letting us come in here and do this and sharing your story with us. And
well, you and your mother, Deanna, y'all are so sweet, you can just move in. You can stay up in the Jeannie room.
Well, I have a feeling this won't be the last time we come make a visit over here. We'll have to come see you as often as we can.
You're welcome anytime. You know, you're from Louisiana, and I was made an official coon-ass by Governor Edwards many years ago, so I can relate.
Well, I appreciate you for doing this, and I know everybody listening does too, and everything you've done for country music and in country music, and this was great, so thank you.
Thank you. I love you. In fact, I love everybody. I love everybody except the enemies of God. Mm. If they're his enemies, they're my enemies.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we love you too, and all of y'all who listening, we appreciate y'all, and thank y'all.
I thank you for every ticket you ever bought to my shows, every record you bought, and for always coming. Anytime I was at Fanfare, the line would be long in front of me, not because I was hot, but because I was accessible. I look people in the eye, and that draws them. You know, you can fix your eyes forward, not look at anybody, and you can be the biggest one in the business, and they won't try to stop you because they don't feel the opportunity. I am maybe too accessible. It keeps me too busy, but you know I love it.
Yes, ma'am. Well, we love you too, and just thanks again for having us out here.
Well, it's been my pleasure.